Typically, people who plan well do well, and the people you see getting mixed up in litigation with bad results are often people who did no planning.
So Tate, I know trade secrets are your area of expertise, and I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about that. Can you tell us what a trade secret is?
At a very simple level, it's a piece of non-public business information that could be valuable to a competitor that's been treated as confidential by the business that's claiming the intellectual property rights. So it's broader than other forms of intellectual property like patents or like copyrights, but it's also more easily eliminated because if it's out there in the public domain already, or if somebody publishes it tomorrow, then the right ends.
Can you give us some examples of trade secrets other than the Coke formula? I mean, when I'm teaching trade secrets, I'm like, the Coke formula, and then they're like, how about others? And I'm always like, ah.
Yeah, it's a famous example, and you'll see a lot of law professors in their classes sort of using that or other sort of famous things. You know, the truth is, though, it can be very small and discrete pieces of information. It doesn't have to be the keys to the kingdom. It doesn't have to be the most valuable information in the company. It could be down in the weeds information like laboratory testing sequences or the amount of time that a semiconductor wafer is baked in the oven that they're baked in, or the temperatures that are used. You know, it all depends on whether that information is public and out there or not. And if it's not, it can be fairly down in the weeds. It doesn't have to be the Coca-Cola formula to be protectable.
Do companies typically make everything a trade secret?
I think we ought to distinguish the way companies behave practically, which is to mark everything as confidential, versus whether something really is confidential. And that takes study into what's been published. Maybe a scientist has published a paper at a university that releases the information. Maybe there's a patent where the information is in the specification. Maybe another company has published it on a website. So the fact that the company treats everything as confidential, which most do, is not actually the same as whether there's truly an IP right that exists.
So Tate, if you start a new company after you leave, how do you know you're not using your old company's trade secrets?
You know, it's an incredibly important question because when people are starting a new company or leaving for another business, they could be in the target sites. Trade secret litigation has really increased over the past few years, and it's a real problem for departing employees. In addition, unlike a patent, trade secrets or potential trade secrets are not written down with any government agency. So it really is up to the employer to come after and chase the employee, sometimes with very expansive and very vague claims. So you're right to ask the question, Liz, how do I know if I'm starting a new business or leaving for another job that I'm not going to be attacked and sued for misappropriating a trade secret? And the best answer we can give to that is that if the individual employee wants to use something that they learned at a previous job, and it can also be found in a public source, that would be a clear example where it's perfectly okay to use it, even though they learned it at the previous job, because they can demonstrate where it was and where it was found. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of gray area in between, and the law, unfortunately, does not give us sort of bright line or black letter answers to this. It's quite often a fact question, because something can be very close to what a professor at UCSF, for example, published, but not quite the same thing. And then there's a battle over whether that marginal difference really is legally significant or not.
So you represent employers in these kinds of cases, right?
So oftentimes I'll represent the company that is doing the hiring. Sometimes we'll represent the individuals themselves. Sometimes they have separate counsel, but quite often we're representing companies who have hired people from other companies. And the claim is that those people brought information into the company that's claimed to be a trade secret, or perhaps that the individuals violated some other restrictive covenant in their contract.
So if you're an employer, you know, and you think that, you know, maybe your employee is about to leave, what are some of the signs that an employee is going to leave and that they might want to take their, you know, your trade secrets with them?
You know, these days we have a problem that we jokingly call the midnight download, which we see in a lot of cases when we read the cases, which is a lot of people are tempted to download files before they leave. And the problem is when you look at those files, sometimes it's completely innocent. People are taking scientific papers, personal papers, they're taking information that really isn't IP. But as you can imagine, that fact pattern is alarming. And it's not surprising that we see a lot of litigation around that.
So if you're leaving, what should you do instead?
You know, when people are leaving to a new job, it's safest not to take anything with them. If they need to get personal files out of the computer, to ask for permission to do that so that they're not doing something that's going to be detected by some software tool that's going to cast them in a bad light. I think people should be pretty proactive in being really careful, making sure that information at the new job is either in the public domain or is going to be different enough that they're not going to get in trouble. Typically, people who plan well do well. And the people you see getting mixed up in litigation with bad results are often people who did no planning, sort of made it up as they went along, didn't realize what all the rules were, because they're not always intuitive. And that's the way they get in trouble.
Tait, I used to work for Tait on trade secret cases.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, he's my boss. Why? You were my boss. You're one of my bosses. I had a lot of bosses, but Tait was